Hi guys, today is April 1st. I can't believe we're already in April. Of course, April 1st, 2020. Today is Wednesday, and we're going to continue with our writing lesson. So I was very close to starting our new unit in Spanish, but as I've been receiving some of your fairy tales, they're very, very good. But I noticed that most of you need to learn how to stretch out your fairy tale. And so instead of moving on to the next unit, I wanted to just give you a little bit more practice. Even if you're done with your first fairy tale, you can still do this strategy that I'm going to teach you to go back and how to stretch out a story. Or if in the last video you already had the first fairy tale and you're like, oh, I need a second one, perfect. You can do it with the second fairy tale. Again, we do this because it's just really, really good practice so that you become amazing writers, which you're already amazing writers, but how do we take it to the next level, okay? So we're gonna start by sharing, or I'm gonna start by sharing my screen in a second. Let me get to it. And we'll begin with our learning intentions for today, as we always do, because that's what we do at Burlington. So learning intention. Today I will learn how to stretch out my fairy tale. My success criteria, I can extend. So extend is just a juicy word for stretch out, but I can extend 2 to 3 sentences to 5 to 7 sentences by adding more detail, either by describing the setting or the characters. My language intention, I use words from our anchor chart on narratives, which I'm about to show you. Social intention, I do the work even when no one is looking. And let's start with our vocabulary for narratives. I know we hadn't done this in the previous videos, but I thought this would be really useful so that we can kind of remember what are some of the words that come to mind when we think of narratives. And we've written 2 different narratives this year so far. The first one was a personal narrative that we wrote in the beginning of the year when you wrote a story about your life or something like a small moment from your life. And right, it's a story that you're creating. And then there's other types of narratives, like we're working on fairy tale narratives or stories where it's like a fictional narrative. It's a story, maybe not about yourself, but it's about something you've imagined and something you've come up with. And so that's what narratives are all about. And here are here's the vocabulary that we're gonna go over and our strategies. So if I say the word, you say the word. Main character, secondary characters such as a challenger, a sidekick, or an advisor. Setting, juicy words like adjectives and verbs. Beginning, middle, and end. Rising action. Climax, right? The most interesting part of your story or the most intense part of your story. Conflict, problem, which is the same. Solution typically comes at the end of the story, like how was the story resolved, what happens at the end. We have similes. When we describe something, we compare to things using the words like or as. We have metaphors, which are very similar to similes. It's a comparison between 2 things. Onomatopoeia, dialogue, we have quotation marks, comma, dialogue tags. Those are some of the words that come to mind when we think of the word dialogue. Our strategies that we've done for this unit, and I've added most of them, but we started by collecting and making a heart map. We chose, right? We did some choosing. We chose an idea for our narrative. We learned how to write strong introductions, like using onomatopoeia, descriptive setting, dialogue. We did a story map. We story mapped our story from beginning, middle, and end. We learned that said is dead, and using better dialogue tags can really make your writing really rich. So instead of saying said, you can say replied or responded or yelled or whispered. Add metaphors to your writing to just make the writing even more rich and make it more engaging. Adding juicy words and adjectives and verbs. Stretching your story out, which is what we're going to do today. And we've learned how to write dialogue to show how characters are feeling in the story and also to kind of move the story along. And so today we're going to take a look at our recipe card. Number 1 is that I'm going to read my fairy tale adaptation. I read Catarella to you yesterday. I started writing a second fairy tale. called Little Red Panda Bear and the Ferocious Snow Leopard. So I'm going to do that in a moment. But as I'm reading, I'm thinking about what's next on my recipe card. So for example, number 2 says, focus on 2 to 3 sentences and think to yourself. So I'm going to read my fairy tale that I have so far. I'm just going to focus on 2 to 3 sentences, and I'm going to think to myself, how can I stretch this out? Right? Sometimes our sentences are simple. How can I make it even better? Longer, better, and doesn't mean longer is always better, but how do we add some details in there to just make the writing even more like oomph, right? You want to just add some oomph to your story. And here are some ways that we can stretch our story out that you're going to watch me do in a moment. Either adding dialogue, describing the setting more in detail, describing the character with more detail. How do they react to things? When a character says something to another character, what is the character doing with their body, or what's happening around them, right? We want to be descriptive. And so I'm going to do part 1 of my recipe card, which is just reading it, right? To kind of refresh your mind or refresh your memory of what I wrote yesterday. And also for myself, like I want to start thinking to myself, what 2 to 3 sentences am I going to focus on so that I can stretch it out? So here we go. Little Red Panda Bear and the Ferocious Snow Leopard. Little Red Panda Bear, your grandmother is sick with a horrible cold. Can you go drop off this bamboo soup and bamboo cake to your Nana? Little Red Panda Bear's mama asked. Of course, Mama, anything for my Nana, Little Red Panda Bear replied. Little Red had a beautiful fur coat, red like a flickering fire, bushy fairy tail with thick brown rings. She grabbed her long red cape from her wardrobe, her wicker basket with the bamboo soup and the bamboo muffins, and headed on the path towards Nana's house. The sun filtered through the tops of trees, creating beautiful shadows on the forest floor. Wild flowers were in full bloom and the air smelled fresh. As Little Red strolled through the forest, she could hear the sound of a nearby creek, the water hitting the rocks softly so she didn't hear the snow leopard approaching. Look at that tasty little red morsel. I bet she's as sweet as an apple, the snow leopard said to himself, his mouth beginning to water like a fountain. A little drool gathering at the corners of his mouth. The snow leopard jumped in front of Little Red and asked, where are you going, Little Red Panda Bear? Little Red was startled. She was not expecting to cross paths with a snow leopard. Her mama had always warned her to steer clear of snow leopards. Hello there, Snow Leopard, said Little Red Panda Bear. Hello, Little Red Panda Bear. Where are you off to today? Oh, me? I'm just going to my grandmother's house. She's feeling quite sick. Do you mean Grandma Red? Asked the Snow Leopard. Yes, that's her. Well, what a small world. She's my good friend. There's a beautiful path towards her house. Let me show you how to get there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is in my mind, I've already picked what I'm going to focus on. I wrote that 3rd paragraph this morning, and it's okay. It's good, but I want to stretch it out. So I'm actually going to exit out a little bit so I can write. So let me see if I can zoom in better. Nope, that's not zooming in, that's zooming out. So hold on a second. Okay, that's a little bit better. So I wanna stretch it out. So I'm either gonna add more dialogue, maybe I'm gonna do all 3. Add more dialogue, describe the setting more, and then how are the characters reacting to like after they talk to each other. So hello there, Snow Leopard, said Little Red Panda Bear. Said Little Red Panda Bear with some, see, this is my description, I'm gonna stretch it out. So like if I were her and she knows that she's supposed to steer clear of the snow leopard, maybe she's like, she has a little fear in her voice, she's a little scared. Said Little Red Panda Bear with some fear in her voice. Her paws began to tremble a little as she held on tightly to the basket with the goods, or with the basket. Okay, hello there, Snow Leopard, said Little Red Panda Bear with some fear in her voice. Her paws began to tremble a little as she held on tightly to the basket. Hello, Little Red Panda Bear, where are you off to today? Replied replied the snow leopard as he grinned maliciously at the little red panda bear. So it's like, has kind of like a bit of an evil smile going on. Like there's a little bit of malice in him. Like he's hungry. He wants to eat her. So he grins maliciously at the little red panda bear. So where are you off to today? Replied the snow leopard as he grinned maliciously at the little red panda bear. Oh, me? I'm just going to my grandmother's house. She's feeling quite sick. Little red panda bear responded as she looked down at her feet nervously. You mean Grandma Red? Asked the snow leopard. Yes, that's her. Well, yes, that's her. How do you know her? Little Red asked. Maybe I'm gonna show that she's thinking maybe like he's not that bad. Let me see. So how do you know her? Little Red asked. So I'm gonna show that she's thinking maybe he's not too bad. Maybe he can be my friend. So she's thinking that, and I'm gonna change the words so I can show you that that's a thought she's having. Maybe he's not too bad after all. Maybe he can be my friend. Oh, what a small world. She's my good friend. There's a beautiful path towards our house. Let me show you how to get there. Okay, so he's doing that because he wants to take a shortcut to Grandma's house and get to Grandma's house before to eat Grandma and to later trick Little Red, right? But I want to describe the setting so far. As Little Red and the snow leopard walked side by side, Little Red couldn't help but be mesmerized by the beautiful path of violets and roses. Beautiful path of violets and roses, the hummingbirds floating by. The hummingbirds floating by. Floating by from flower to flower. Okay, so I just want you to notice, and I'm gonna make this a little bit. I'm gonna have to do this again, guys, hold on. Let me see if I can go back to normal. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna make this a little bit wider so we can see it. Ooh, that is way too much. I went too far. I've gone too far. That was way too much. Okay, so let me try to make this wider so I can fit this in more. Okay, perfect. And so I wanted to show you when a character has a thought, you want to change the word so that it's italicized, and that means it's slanted. So you can see that that's something she's thinking. She's not saying it out loud. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read that last paragraph. If you remember when I first read it to you, it was shorter. Didn't have a lot of detail. I went in, I added more dialogue. I described the setting a little bit more. I'm describing to you how that both characters what are they doing with their bodies, or how are they reacting, or what are they thinking. So listen to this one now completely, right? Because I've already fixed my mistakes, or tried to fix my mistakes. Hello there, Snow Leopard, said Little Red Panda Bear with some fear in her voice. Her paws began to tremble a little as she held on tightly to the basket. Hello, Little Red Panda Bear, where are you off to today? Replied the Snow Leopard as he grinned maliciously at the Little Red Panda Bear. Oh, me? I'm just going to my grandmother's house. She's feeling quite sick. Little Red Panda Bear responded as she looked down at her feet nervously. Do you mean Grandma Red? Asked the Snow Leopard. Yes, that's her. How do you know her? Little Red asked. Maybe he's not too bad after all. Maybe he can be my friend. Well, what a small world, she's my good friend. There's a beautiful path towards her house. Let me show you how to get there. As Little Red and the Snow Leopard walked side by side, Little Red couldn't help but be mesmerized by the beautiful path of violets and roses, the hummingbirds floating by from flower to flower. Wow. You see the difference between the first paragraph that I had and now I've stretched it out? I'm gonna ask you to do the same, either with that first fairy tale you wrote or that second one you've been working on. Just go back in, take 2 to 3 sentences, read it again, and say to yourself, what can I do here to make it longer? What can I do here to make it juicier? Add some words in there, some dialogue, describe it a little bit more. I can't wait to see what you guys have when you stretch out your stories a bit more. Even if you're done, please go back. I really want to see some stories that are a little bit more stretched out. See you guys in the next writing video. Again, if you have any questions, you want to send me anything, please do. A lot of you have been sending me stuff and it just makes me really excited. I'm proud of you that you're still working and you're trying your best under the circumstances that we're in. So see you guys in the next video.